Hello, everyone. And if you're currently watching this, I'm sure you know who I am. I am Matt Hardy, and I am sitting here in my hotel room. I am on the road whilst working with WWE. And I thought I would try something different today for my YouTube channel. I thought I would try a vlog, a video log, basically where I go back and tell you guys a story or speak my thoughts on some particular subject. And maybe I'll try this once in a while if people seem to enjoy it, if people seem to dig it. Anyway, today I was thinking about, since it's been a little over a week since we buried my close friend Tracy Caddell, a lot of people don't know Tracy's story, and I thought this would be a very good platform where I could actually tell people Tracy's story and let them know the influence that he had on myself and Jeff and all of the Omega Powers, the people that were closely associated with us, and all the people that worked together to build what became the legendary Omega. I met Tracy when I was very, very young. Tracy was 6 years older than I am. Whenever he passed, he had just turned 50 a week prior. So yeah, way too young to go, obviously. But whenever I first started school in Cameron Elementary School, Tracy, I want to say, was in the 6th grade. He was, 5-6 years ahead of me, obviously. So he was in the 6th grade. I was a kindergartner, and the reason I knew him and we became aware and familiar with one another is because he lived just a few hundred feet off the Hardy compound. His mother, her house was literally less than a mile from where I lived and where I was born and raised. So obviously we were on the bus for those years that we were in the same school together, during kindergarten, when I was in kindergarten, when I was in 1st grade, when I was in 2nd grade. And because he lived right up the street, I think he almost felt like it was his duty to, like, okay, this is like one of my boys from my hood. I have to make sure to watch out and protect him because he's young and I'm old and I've been here for a while. So that's where I first and initially met Tracy Caddell, riding on the bus, because we were on the same bus route. We were the stops that were one and then another. It was drop Matt Hardy off, then drop Tracy Caddell off on our bus route. Anyway, I'd met him there. He'd left, graduated from Cameron Elementary School, went on to high school, and I went on to high school as well. And while I was in the midst of high school, obviously, as you guys know, this crazy obsession and dream with becoming a professional wrestler really got inside me and got inside Jeff, so we were doing that. And most people know our story. Almost everybody that's a diehard wrestling fan knows the story of Matt and Jeff Hardy. We begged our dad for a trampoline, and we eventually got it, and then we built a wrestling ring, a makeshift wrestling ring from it in our backyard. Well, one of the days we were in our backyard doing one of our big shows with a couple buddies of ours. Actually, Tracy was driving down the road, and he pulled in and stopped at our house. And he said, "Hey, man, what's going on? How are you guys? You guys do wrestling out here on a trampoline in the back?" Man, I love wrestling. I'm such a fan of the NWA, and considering I've been working out real hard and I've been trying to get in shape and whatnot. I'd really love to give wrestling a run one time, a go at it. Do you guys have aspirations of wrestling as well? And we're like, yeah, we do. We don't really know where to start, but we're going to graduate school and then maybe go to a wrestling school or do whatever. And Tracy said, "Well, I know I'm a little older, but you don't mind, I would love to come out here and even, play around with you guys and wrestle and do whatever." And that's where it first started. And then Tracy, although he was, obviously older than myself and Jeff, he was out there and he wrestled on the trampoline going boing, 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 boing with myself and Jeff. And myself and Tracy met a guy who was a carny, for better or worse terminology. He truly was. He did different things in fairs and carnivals and whatnot. His name was Kenneth Morgan, and he had this 20-by-20 wrestling ring, which was like concrete on the outskirts and on the hard parts of the ring. But then the inside of the ring there was a section of trampoline, and he was trying to set up a deal and get a contract with the fairs on the East Coast where he would have wrestling shows with this ring, and guys could run and spring on the trampoline and jump into the corner and do a big splash and whatever. And Tracy and I met with him, and he asked Tracy and I if we would help him book a show and put a show together. And that's where things really started. And then we ended up doing a couple shows with Kenneth, and I think Kenneth Morgan realized he wasn't going to become a millionaire or $100,000 nair or $100 nair by being a wrestling promoter using that ring and the trampoline in the center. So he decided, well, I don't really think it's worth the while because I can't really pay anybody and it costs more just to, travel and get the ring there and set up, and I'm not making any money, so, I don't think I'm going to do it anymore. So myself and Tracy, we offered to buy the ring from Kenneth Morgan. So we bought the ring that he had, and myself and Tracy, along with Jeff, we converted it to a typical standard wrestling ring. It was very hard to put together and very difficult. We didn't know what we were doing. Even though I was going to school for engineering, I certainly wasn't a good engineer when it came to converting that ring into a standard wrestling ring. But anyway, lo and behold, we ended up buying that ring. We converted it to a regular wrestling ring, and then myself and Tracy, we started running shows under the title East Coast Wrestling Federation, ECWF. That was the first name of our promotion, which eventually, when we got our first small investor, it became New Frontier Wrestling Alliance, NFWA. And then once we went in business with Thomas Simpson, we changed the name to Omega, which stood for the Organization of Modern Extreme Grappling Arts, which was a name that I thought of one night in a dream, ironically. It was a premonition. But anyway, back to what I was saying. When Tracy and I started promoting shows, all the work that was done was myself and Tracy. Jeff was in high school. I had just got out. I was just starting to go to college. I would come home every weekend because I had a crazy obsession with wanting to fulfill my dream of being a professional wrestler. I was going to school at UNC Charlotte. And I'll tell you, it was tricky just because Tracy and I, he was young. I was super young, and like we would put on our dress pants or our khaki pants and a button-up shirt, and we would go in local businesses all across the county and ask them for sponsorships. For $25, you could be a basic sponsor, and you get a spot in the ad. You're advertising on all the posters. You get X amount of tickets, or for $50, you could be a VIP sponsor. And that was our game plan. We wanted to pay for the building, whatever venue we were in. We wanted to pay all the expenses it was going to take to set up the show, and then also we wanted to try and give all of the boys, all of the talent, a little bit of money, because we knew how when you're doing indies, you often get raped when it comes to getting a little payday. So that was our goal. But man, I can't tell you how humbling and how embarrassing it is in many ways to go in some of those businesses and ask for money or sponsorship and to get shut down and just have people looking at you. Go, no, not interested, out of here. But that's what we're doing. We were trying to work on living our dream out. We were trying to make something come true and make something that we had envisioned materialize. But every step of the way, I did that with Tracy, and it was him and I. Everything that was done for every show from 1992 to 1996-ish was myself and Tracy Caddell. So obviously, I spent a lot of time with him, and he was just a good brother, almost kind to a fault in many ways. And he loved wrestling so much. He loved to work on his body in a bodybuilding sense whenever he would go to the gym. So we also had fun training together, especially at that time I was young and healthy and invincible. So to me, it was fun to go in the gym and try and go heavy and go insane and do 3 sets of 6 or 4 sets of 4, which is maniacal now thinking about it in this day and age. But anyway, we spent so much time together. And then we delegated responsibilities very well. I was the one who was the booker. I was the one who was writing the shows and putting things together on that end. I would book the buildings. Tracy, his job was to make the tickets. He would make the programs. He would print all the posters and all the paperwork stuff we need. And I would book the talent. So everything that was done was literally between him and I. So obviously you bond when you have those kind of successes and also those kind of failures. Whenever you're trying to get sponsors and you're getting doors slammed in your face and people cursing at you, pushing you out their door. But he was a good brother. I'm glad I could experience all those times with him. And then in 1993, Tracy had a really bad car accident where he was involved in a collision with a transfer truck. And during that time, he was very injured, and that changed him physically for the remainder of his life in many, many ways. He lost his spleen during that. He had real bad kidney damage, and his knee was just shot, literally almost destroyed, so he had a lot of issues after that. So Tracy slowed down wrestling, and he kind of moved more to like behind the scenes and promotion, and doing whatever you have to do behind the scenes to make the show run smoothly and be successful. So he was real good at that because he was always open minded. He was up for doing whatever it took to make the show better, make the product better. And then something I certainly have to talk about is that like I was there when his son, Trevor Lee Caddell, many of you probably know him as Trevor Lee on the Independents. I mean, I was there when he was born. And then I saw him every step of the way, from when he was, God, I mean, I remember him so well being Wolfie's age and being Maxwell's age and just wanting to get into the ring and running and hitting the bottom ropes. I mean, just almost like my son, like Maxwell, he's just going to be around the business his whole life. I mean, Wolfie as well, I guess, but like Trevor was like destined to be a wrestler in many, many ways. And there's a big part of me that has a special love for Trevor, where he almost feels like a nephew to me because I saw him, from literally the day he was born, and I saw his upraising and upbringing. And, whenever we worked out, Tracy kept the ring at his house in his backyard. So that's where we would go work out, whenever we had time on the weekends or later on. If we were training anyone, it was at Tracy's. So Trevor was always there, and he was always around the ring, and he was always watching and observing, and it became instinctual. I think that's probably why he's so good right now, because it was just like an instinctual thing to be in a wrestling ring and to be a performer and a wrestler. So if you don't know Trevor Lee, I recommend checking him out. Very, very talented, a young man, 24 years old, going to have a great future ahead of him as long as he stays healthy, and he's very smart, so he should. But Tracy's biggest legacy as time went on, I think, was to promote and just really help his son get his name out there and make connections and be as good as he could be in the business. I think Tracy's goal shifted later on from like ever him making it as a performer or like a backstage employee or someone who was important in the business on that capacity. His goal and his importance shifted to just like wanting his son to succeed, and he just gave his entire heart to Trevor when it came to that front. He wanted Trevor to succeed. He wanted him to be a star in the wrestling business, and part of that was probably because, between, the wreck and just timing and everything else, Tracy never got that opportunity, so he obviously wanted that for his son, and that's the epitome of any father, right? As a father, or I would probably say as a parent, you want your children to be successful, and you want them to be happy, and you want them to live their very best life. And nobody wanted that for their child more than Tracy Caddell did. So, it's so strange. I miss Tracy. I feel like I'm still going to see him around because I would still see him every so often because we didn't live too terribly far from one another, and then we would stay in contact and exchange messages every few weeks or whatever. So I'd still see him around pretty often. It's so odd, so strange that I'm not going to see him anymore. But with that being said, I just wanted to come in and give you a little bit of the story behind Tracy Caddell because a lot of people don't know him, and we had a lot of great times together, either A, promoting shows, or B, traveling the roads together, working indies, trying to just catch a break and make it in the business, or either going out and asking for sponsorships and trying to be professional wrestling promoters. So a lot of good times with Tracy, and I'm going to miss him, and I certainly want you to remember him, and I want people to be happy by this video, not sad. I want it to be a celebration of his life. Tracy, my friend, I miss you, brother. Take care. Godspeed.